Yeah, you,
So, right now, for me, violently,
it's human nature. Bruce said it, you gotta defend yourself. You feel like you gotta defend yourself. They did a lot of training. They had exercises of hours and days of sitting there and people coming up on them and yanking and pulling and calling them derogatory names and being very, very verbal and physically abusive. Those people worked hard. They trained to be able to go and sit there and not just take it, but to make a choice. You know, to take a stand, believe in something strong enough to where they would go through that kind of torture. So they trained, and we're gonna do something in a little bit that's gonna show you guys, give you both sides of that, so you'll be able to see how that really feels and how your body responds and your thought process responds to it.
So let's just kind of organize for a minute in our minds what was just down. That there's different types of violence, that nonviolence is not passive, nonviolence is active, nonviolence can be aggressive, and nonviolence can combat violence, right? That it is an act of action. Then Ricky brought out that people who engage in nonviolence have some training, because it just doesn't come naturally in today's society, given the culture that we live in, that our first thing is to defend ourselves. Violence meets violence. And certainly that would appear if it were a group. We all heard like an angry mob, right? But here, we're saying that if there's training, if there are some tools available, then that violence can be met with active nonviolence, and that active nonviolence can highlight the violence and dissipate it, can overcome it, all right? Think about one more example. I don't know if any of you are familiar with ACTA. That's the gay rights organization. When AIDS was happening, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and when nobody wanted to address the issue, President Reagan wouldn't even mention it. You know, people were dying. Thousands of people were dying on a monthly basis. There were young gay men who decided enough was enough. And they needed medicines. And they needed money spent on research. So what they did is they would block off the streets. They would march. They would disrupt traffic. They would upset the status quo. That was active nonviolence. They would get dragged off to jail, have to be fingerprinted, have to be put in the computer, fill up the jail cells, wait to be released, just to do it all over again. Cities were flooded with that. That brought attention to the issue, right? So active violence yields positive results. But those people were trained. I happen to have lived in San Francisco during that time of the early AIDS epidemic, and I can tell you that people met in apartments and planned the strategies and shared and talked. And there were people who came in who did trainings, who taught people when you get arrested, when you get pulled over, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. Do not hit, do not do this, do not spit. Because at that time we didn't know how HIV was even spread. So potentially spitting on somebody could be considered an act of grave violence. You could have been killed or worse. I don't know anything worse than yeah. Ask them how they move from violence to nonviolence. There you go. That's a great question, though. Think about it for a minute. Violence, we get very clear. We can talk about it. We've got examples. We've got personal stories. We can access our own memories. How do we move from that to nonviolence?
In your own personal experiences, when you're confronted with a situation that stirs up fear, or you lash out verbally because somebody says something mean to you, or somebody pushes you, or how do you move yourself? How do you make a choice, or how have you made choices to not retaliate in a violent way? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Taking a moment and breathing.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just gotta stop and just take like a couple deep breaths, just to calm your body down, because sometimes you can do something that you're gonna really regret, because you just immediately react to something, and you don't think about it, you just do it.
So you're taking a minute to do something and weigh what could affect the rest of your life. A minute versus the rest of your life. That's a good deal.
Yeah, because in a split second, you can make a bad choice and end up incarcerated for something that you would have never thought you would have done just out of an automatic response.
Yes.
Just like tell yourself it's not worth it. A lot of the time it isn't, so don't give them your time.
Positive self-talk. Yes.
Well, if you, like when you try to calm down, try to think about how they're feeling, like think about their side of the story, and think about how, you know, if you're violent to them, everything will just get worse, and maybe how to like calm them down without, you know, making them too mad.
Cool. We're gonna hold on to that. Yes.
I think it's good sometimes to like go and vent to someone else.
Sure.
You're angry, like, you're
Defuse it, yeah. But when you're right there in
Okay,
it,
somebody behind you.
oh, yes.
So,
When you have get into a situation where you if you're getting mad or angry or something, you want to say something, but just kind of walk away, and then you can take you can vent to someone and just take a break and then you can come back. But if you're in a situation where you're getting angry, if you walk away, think about it. You have to get away from the situation first before you just do it.
Get some distance so that you can regroup. But in all of these acts of violence that we're talking about, there's another person, isn't there? There's another person. So if we get past all the anger, the screaming, the shouting, the names, or whatever, strip all that down, there's another human being there. I think that's really important. Because do you think that person just woke up that day and decided, hey, this is a good day to be angry. This is a good day to be violent. Or did something else happen? What do you think? Yeah.
I think like during a certain time in people's lives, they just are naturally angry and they're, like whatever they're going through, I think that even when they do wake up, I think they're just naturally angry at the world and like maybe nothing even happened at that time, but like, I think they just are always angry. I think there's certain people that are always gonna be like that unless they like change the way they are, but I mean, for a while, I think they're just angry at the world.
Well,
somebody behind you.
yeah.
Maybe something you did to make them angry, or someone else did that, something happened to them that day that made them angry, or recently that made them angry.
Something in their life could have happened. How they were raised. What they experienced. Just like we have things that make us angry, isn't it possible that people have things that make them angry? There's another person behind all that anger. What would it be like if we connected to that other person and identified our commonality as opposed to the differences? Right? Would that make a difference? I don't know. What do you think? Is there a way to diffuse a person when they are so angry? How can you do that? If we can't walk away and we don't have that moment to think, how can we diffuse it? Yes?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, just leave them alone for a little bit, and when they calm down, you can go talk to them and like ask them what's wrong, and just, cause it really, you know, helps other people to just talk about stuff.
Cool. If you can, yes.
Identify the source of the anger, like beyond what just happened.
Ah, that's brilliant.
Behind you.
That's,
Oh, that's what I was gonna say.
Oh, that's what you.
identify the source of the anger. That involves you having to look at that person and think about their life for a moment. think about their humanity. What happened to you? What did you experience that made you this angry? And in doing that, all of a sudden now I can relate, not to the anger, but to a person and having a life. We all have lives, right? So we look for that commonality. That's the humanity. We were talking, when we talked about the examples of anger, school came up a lot. And school's a big deal for you. That's where a lot of your life happens. That is your community for all practical purposes, right? And I remember when I was in high school, I don't know if it's changed, but there were groups of kids. There were the stoners, there were the jocks, the cheerleaders, the nerds, right? And we had AV crews. I don't know, they probably do something else now. But do they still have those groups? So isn't walking into, do they also have lunch together in their groups? Like the band kids and the jocks all have the territory? Still? God, I think things would have changed. Well, so walking into that cafeteria is a dicey proposition sometimes. Unless you have your group, which you walk directly to. You take your tray, you sit down and you walk to your group, and now you have the safety of your group. What would it be like if you walk into another group and sit at another table? For real, what would happen?
Be awkward.
Awkward. They'll look at you, they'll stare. They'll probably do more than look at you and stare. You know, a few choice words, what are you doing here, right? And then you feel all that shame and uncomfortableness or whatever. So groups give us something. They give us some power, some comfortability. So we go back to our groups.
But groups limit me too.
How so?
Not having the interaction with other people.
So if we interacted with those other groups, what do we get from that?
You learn more about each other.
Perspective.
Respect.
You get to see each other's humanity. We're more common than uncommon. Yes.
I'm not really like in a group. I hang out with like a lot of different people,
Uh-huh.
and people kind of like don't like different groups don't get along with each other. So when they find out that like I'm hanging out with them, they get mad at me. So
Oh, yeah, or drop you,
yeah.
right? Oh, yeah, I've been there, yeah. Don't talk to her, she's friends with.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Am I right? Am I other right? Yeah.
I think it's not cool because like you have your friends at school, like normally they're your age or the grade below or above you, and then like normally all go to youth group and youth groups where it's all four grades and like all
Mhm.
different people from all different groups, and we all kind of come together and like we learn more about people and each other that we didn't know. So
You become richer, right? And you learn more, and then by learning more, you see, I have that feeling, I've done that, I've experienced that, yes.
Well, I feel like I'm kind of like Molly. Like I'm friends with a lot of people, but then also like, I mean, it's nice because you get to know everybody. But then when those people are in groups, like you kind of feel left out sometimes because like even though you're friends with them, they still have like they're all close and they have their own things and like I'm friends with you, but I don't really like I'm the one that's excluded when we're all together.
So you think all the excluded, all the, let's call them rovers.
Yeah.
And for the rovers in the group, but you can't stand it because they're all rovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just like with the lunchroom situation, I don't think it's necessarily like we're mean people and we don't want to accept everyone. I think it's just like if somebody sat with not necessarily my lunch table, but like came up to me and my friends, I'd feel like the safety of being able to say what I want to say in the car and them the trust isn't there,
Yeah.
so it's like awkward.
It is. What you're describing is fear. Fear of what's going to happen. Fear of how this makes me feel. What I can or cannot say, can or cannot do. Right? I was comfortable, now I'm not. That's a big change. So you know, my friends are comfortable, you sit down, now I'm not. Not fearful. I think fear permeates a lot of what we experience. Yes?
Kind of something off like what Natalie just said. Instead of being scared of like what I or like nervous of what I can say, like because she's like the or whoever came and sat down. Sometimes it's hard because like maybe your friends are a little more judgmental than you are towards others. Because like if someone else sat down, I'd be like welcoming. But I feel like some of my friends would just be like, "Why are you sitting here?" Like they wouldn't even try to make an effort.
So you cave?
So sometimes, yeah, like you'll hold back and not try to like make conversation because then they'll get just like annoyed at you for trying to be nice.
So you take the passive role, right? You don't say anything. Kind of like the person viewing the video with the puppies. Kind of. It's happening. I'm watching. You know. Yes. But I'm not saying you're a
No, I
puppy.
was just saying, I don't think like I don't think my friends would like say mean things
Right.
like to the person. Like they'd be like, yeah, that's fine, like sit down. But I think like in reality they like would want them to like they would
Yeah,
like
because they're different.
yeah.
And because we were here and we're a group and now we're not, because you're here, right? Yeah.
Well, this actually happened to me. It was like for the whole school year, like everybody sits at the same table every day, like never really changes. And then one day there was like these 3 girls sitting at our table. Like we were confused at first, and so we sat down with them. And like their friend group like had a fight and stuff, so they couldn't sit with them anymore. So then they sat there, and like the rest of the year, like they sat with us, and like we kind of like talked to them. Like we weren't like friends, but like we still like talked to them, and like they were like with our conversation and stuff. So.
Because you could relate to them having fights with their friends?
No, just because we like accepted them. So we didn't want